Please be seated. Good morning. My name is Bill Sachs, and I have known Christ and Holy Trinity both up close and afar for some years. At one time, I served as the rector of St. Matthew's in Wilton and then helped at St. Luke's in Darien, and count myself a friend both of John Branson and Whitney Edwards, so it is good to be with you this morning. Despite our best efforts, sooner or later, you and I lose things. We lose keys, we lose phones, we lose the notes so carefully taken, the instructions we needed, the list of all we intended to do. They aren't where we laid them, and no search recovers them. Suddenly the day goes awry. The great intentions, the careful management, all of our wonderfully neurotic initiative must be shelved, at least for the moment. In a frenzy we look, but the frenzy produces nothing. The very thing we need has vanished, and we must consider next steps. But we don't want next steps. We want those keys. We want that phone. We want that list. So an emotional reaction sets in, and the people around us start to inch away. They can see the cloud that's forming over our head. Words like anger or frustration or depression start to kick in. The feelings are real, they're unavoidable, but still no keys, no phone, no list, and no amount of agitation will alleviate the problem. We debate asking for help, but what would anyone else do? So we talk ourselves out of that. We're beyond consolation now. If we can't find the keys or the phone or the list or whatever it may be, then what good are words? Now it's tempting to blame someone. Anger and loss and fear and depression not only take over, they begin to define us, to consume us, because what was lost cannot be found. Bad enough when it's keys or a phone. Bad enough when the list has to be reconstructed. Bad enough when your plans for the day fall apart. The next day we will regroup, still grumbling. But once in a while, a day comes along when something quite precious is lost and cannot be found. 15 years ago today, it was a bright Tuesday morning, and I had elaborate plans waiting in my office. I worked at 2nd Avenue and 43rd Street in Midtown Manhattan at a church-related foundation. It was bright and sunny. As I walked through Grand Central that morning, it was going to be a good day. And then it wasn't a good day. The day's plans were forgotten, never to be retrieved. Within an hour, I was walking into Lower Manhattan to find my daughter in the low-rise building where she worked on Lower Broadway, 3 blocks from the World Trade Center. It was a day not to be forgotten. Regardless of where we were, our memories of that day have become a frozen jumble of images, partly drawn from the media, of course, partly drawn from our confusion and our efforts to find out what was happening and to make sense of it if we could. Inevitably, people were central, and when stories of people filtered out, we seized upon them. We were eager to find hope, but more often we were stunned by the loss, especially when people dear to us were reported lost. For a time, we were united in grief. Our leaders spoke of resolve, and that drew us forward somehow. We needed resolve. We needed the urge to act, and that sufficed for a time. We needed clarity and focus as individuals and as a nation. Amid the pain of loss, we stumbled ahead. But now we can see the extent of the loss. Of course, primarily people whom we continue to lose from the after effects of the day. And then we lost our innocence. Even now we are inclined to speak of 9/11 as a tragedy. Certainly it was a tragedy, but even more, it was evil, a term we have difficulty using. Pure evil, born of hatred, the abuse of so many lives based on an evil misuse of religion. We faced evil, and our innocence was lost. So if we have difficulty with the loss of keys and phones, we really have trouble with an occasion like 9/11. And we continue to have a horrible time. It is one thing to grieve, that is part of life. But grief can fail to resolve. Grief can become anger and fear, and we as a people have taken that turn. A new CNN poll released 2 days ago concludes that roughly half of all Americans speak of being fearful and angry. To make matters worse, not only have our fear and anger increased since 9/11/2001, our fear and anger have increased markedly in the last 5 years. Something precious was lost 15 years ago, and we have continued to lose it. Of course, there are external causes. Extremism remains a threat. The economy operates in fits and starts. Political division, scandals in all institutions, the symptoms abound. We have lost something precious. Call what we have lost hope. Call it optimism. Or call it what it really is. Call it the loss of ourselves. In his recent book entitled Hillbilly Elegy, author J.D. Vance makes this sense of loss alarmingly tangible. The story is telling because Vance is both a young adult and the product of a blue-collar environment. His family believed profoundly that one could move ahead, that life could be better. And indeed, Vance attended the Yale Law School. But he returned home from New Haven to find a world in shambles. Family and friends locked in feuds and alienation, alcoholism and addiction, listlessness, lack of motivation, lack of focus, anger, fear. Something was being lost. It was nobody's fault. It was everybody's responsibility. And yet no one seemed to know what to do. So now we begin to understand Jesus' parables recorded in the 15th chapter of Luke's Gospel. A shepherd is not content until he finds the one lost sheep. A woman cannot sleep until she turns up a missing coin. Sounds like us, doesn't it? There is something timeless about it. It's almost reassuring. Substitute keys and phones we can get, but what makes this story different? What makes this story different in a way that can make us different? How can this story inform who we are? What do we do when we know that what was lost is not coming back? It cannot be retrieved. What are we to learn other than we must keep searching? So let's look again at Luke chapter 15. Let's look again at what was lost and at what was recovered. Sheep and silver coins prove symbolic of a more precious reality. That reality is wholeness, being complete, being together. The 99 sheep are incomplete because one is missing. And we are incomplete when anyone is missing from our midst. It is, of course, a challenging idea because so much of our sense of being complete centers on ourselves, on our individuality, on our ability to decide and to act as we wish. That's why the keys and the phones and the lists matter so much. They represent our presumed freedom, our right to do as we choose, when we please to do so. It is a cherished American value, and it is inherently good and true. But perhaps, just perhaps, our emphasis on being individuals has gone too far. Luke's gospel, underscored by 1 Timothy, which is the epistle appointed for today, points us in a different direction. Simply put, we need each other. There is no whole until what has been lost is found. That shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't surprise us to hear that we need each other. Certainly, we drown in all the talk of diversity and pluralism and globalization and all the other buzzwords. And these are indeed more than interesting abstractions. We must be more than a curiosity to each other, more than a brief topic at a cocktail party. We truly need each other. We cannot move ahead without each other. The daily flood of news and politics may reinforce our doubts, but the reality is we need each other, even as different and diverse as we have become. I'll give you an example. At a recent dinner a few weeks ago in Richmond, Virginia, of people from various religious congregations, a young woman described with great energy her work as an EMT, putting herself through college by giving emergency medical aid, being part of an emergency medical team. She spoke glowingly and articulately of her faith as her motivation, wanting to help people in need because of her sense of God's love for all. It was amusing that every other word was like, but that's the way it happens these days. And then, with a great smile and great anticipation, she told the story of her medical team arriving at the home of an elderly woman who had passed out. They revived the woman. She came to, but as the woman came to, she let out a loud shriek. You see, the young woman who was tending to her, the young woman who is the EMT, the young woman for whom every other word is like, is a Muslim who was wearing a headscarf. And in fact, the woman shrieked, "Oh no, they're Muslims in heaven." The woman was startled to be treated by a Muslim who revived her and who was smiling at her. The audience thought the story was great. This, after all, was an interfaith dinner of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. You see, we need each other. We need to be with one another more than ever. Finding what we have lost will never happen in the media. They don't get it, they will hardly notice. No political leader is ever going to inspire it, certainly not in this season, not knowingly. Finding what we have lost can only begin here, in this congregation and many other congregations, among people like you and me, worshiping God, knowing and learning and relearning that we cannot go it alone, finding fresh resolve because we feel ourselves to be in the presence of the one who created us, finding fresh direction because we believe in Jesus Christ, through whom we can turn around and be made whole. By no other means, through no other approach, can we ever come together. Can we discover the vision and begin to move toward it together? We are indeed precious as individuals, but our preciousness only blossoms fully when we are together. And that only happens here, in this congregation and in so many other congregations. Here and only here, who we are, what we can be, what we can recover, all of that becomes clear. It is our dependence upon God that we acknowledge together. It is our celebration of God's love for us, a love so real we must share it and share it and share it again. It is dedication to lives of service, attending to the needs in our midst. Day by day, kindness by kindness, God's love becomes vivid, and we discover how to go forward. More than fear or anger, which we truly can move beyond, more even than grief, as powerful as its hold, we can be united in love and service, and we must be, so that we can be made whole. There is no other way. It is an honor to be with you today and to continue with you in spirit. May God join us together more firmly than ever. Amen.